Oh, we're live. um, uh,
Okay.
I'll answer your question in one sec. Okay, so here we are. We're going live. We are. This is for the Society Project. We are debating the topic of if animals should be forced to be security animals or rescue animals. I think in most cases it would be dogs. So dogs that work for like police dogs or dogs that search for drugs and stuff like that at airports. And then I actually don't know too much about rescue dogs, and I think I heard about avalanche dogs. So, anyways, we'll just hop into it. Vabe, I'm gonna call you Vabe until I get the full pronunciation down of everything. So, Vabe,
It
we're
works.
gonna
It works.
okay, Vabe. What's your stance on this topic?
So we don't have a backup actually. So we need these animals. It's not because I usually care about life and we care. I have a perspective that okay, animal lives are important. Their suffering matters. But when it comes to humans and it comes to their life, I am kind of ready to ignore animals. If I have to save a person or an animal and I don't know both of them, I'm gonna save the human. So for that reason, we need animals for certain things. And search and rescue is the only thing where we don't have machinery right now. We don't have any other tools other than animals. So my vote is yes, we need them.
Okay, for every element of those topics, the search and rescue, and
Most
for
of them, yeah,
the
most of them.
police, and okay, and then Jeremy, if I remember correctly, you have
Yeah.
a slightly different take. So, yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I do have a different take, although I also tend to come down on the side of agreeing with most jobs for dogs. Um, I even hesitate to say just uses of dogs because I don't think they're being used in the same way that sheep are used for their fur. Um, I look at the dogs, and I've been around dogs a lot in my life, and I read some stuff on animal psychology in general. Um, I think that for a lot of these dogs, it pretty clearly provides a life of more positive well-being than um, the typical experience of a pet dog who spends a lot of their day sitting at home without the humans, often as the only dog, so completely alone. Um, Far more sedentary than wolves would be in the wild, probably than the dog's natural instinct wants. They don't get to roam around. I've heard numerous people who seem to have some expertise say that you know some of the happiest dogs in our societies are the companions of homeless people
Hmm.
because they get to be outdoors and they get to move around a lot and they're always with the human. They always kind of have their pack. They don't have to spend that alone time. And that the dogs that people think of as the pampered pets of middle or upper class people are often experiencing much worse well-being than the homeless guy's dog, because those dogs, while their human is away at work, are just living very lives that are very unnatural for them and uncomfortable,
Mhm.
just lying on a sofa being painfully bored. Um, so I think I said in my comment that the only dogs that I would clearly want criminalized are police dogs, and that's because they're just clearly exposed to not only fatal injuries but all sorts of moderate injuries. Um, Canine units, it's part of the phenomenon of police in general. They make excuses for a lot of very horrible behavior, and when a dog gets killed, they sure put a lot of effort into honoring that dog through a ceremony, but in practice, they're exposing dogs to a whole lot of risks
Gotcha.
every
Do
time
you
they use them.
do you feel the same about like an airport security dog?
No, I don't think so. I don't. I don't think a dog that's sniffing for bombs and drugs is very likely to be shot by terrorists or something. That would be a very unusual situation compared to the everyday violent criminals that canine units are interacting with. And even if it's not a violent criminal, there's just so many ways that dogs could be injured in
Okay.
policing.
So would you say that if it was limited to where the police can only use them for drugs as well, so if they pull somebody over and they're suspicious that the car is lined with drugs and they want the dog to smell it out, if the dog's only used, basically if the dog's never sent into a dangerous area, would it become okay for police?
Um, in terms of just the animal welfare issue, um, yeah, trying to separate out all the problems I have with the drug war and the violations of humans and all of the harm that's caused by that. I guess that wouldn't be so bad of a business job for a dog to be doing for the dog.
Okay. It'd be
Um,
basically like the airport, but kind of on the go sometimes.
Something like that.
Okay. Okay. So, Vabe, what do you think of the idea that Jeremy thinks that the dog shouldn't be used as police dogs that could go into harm's way?
What you said, police dogs, like 90% of their work is in canine units where they are just sniffing for drugs or other contrabands. That's all they're doing 90% of the times. Other than that, I don't have problems with working dogs at all. But there is one place I thought you guys, someone will talk about what happens with them after they retire, because that's the only place where I have no valid reasons to say it's fine. Other than that, I, I kind of agree with Jeremy that he's not contradicting with my point at all. So
Okay. So, like
most of
when
the time, police dogs are safe, and that's all they are doing. What you just said.
okay. So in the cases where like maybe a criminal is running away and they say stop or we're going to release the canine dog and the person doesn't stop and they do and the dog like stops the person. Um, so
That
any cases like
happens so
that,
rare.
yeah.
That's an extremely rare situation. We need to
But
understand that. And if we have a human who's gonna run away, run and tackle a human, other human who can stab him, I'd rather let the dog do it. I care
gotcha.
about dogs. You have no idea. I have like 20 plus dogs, but it's not about if you're literally choosing that who needs to be more safe, I'd rather keep the person safe.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, Yeah, so one thing I noticed that you were saying was that so you care more about humans than animals, which I agree. If there's a burning building and there's a dog or a person, I'd save the person every time.
With the
But
um,
what's that?
Most of the times, if it's
with,
my pet animal, sorry, please,
I
Jeremy, continue.
I would agree, but with the usual asterisk for any question of population ethics that the typical carnist human causes much more unnecessary suffering than their own life is worth. The typical meat eater causes
Hmm.
far more torture than their own life is worth. So any question that's about saving humans, it kind of needs this caveat that says in a vegan world where that human isn't going to be causing the torture of lots and lots of pigs and chickens and cows and fish.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so yeah. So Carnus human, unfortunately, sad to say, many of my family and friends and students and so on. But if that's how you're living your life, continuing to cause this torture, then it's morally better to save the dog than you. But once you become a human who's actually using your human capacity well to make the world a better place rather than a much worse place for your being here, then it will become better for you, to save you than the dog.
yeah. So I guess how I'd look at it would be if I couldn't know if I know the likelihood of somebody not being vegan and there's a dog and a person in a building and therefore the odds of them not being vegan I would still save the human. But you're right, if I was able to know like okay, this dog is the greatest dog ever that did all these great things and this human happens to be a human that knows exactly the tortures that go on in factory farming, and this person's like 500 pounds overweight and eats all the most unhealthy food just because taste pleasure, they care more about taste pleasure than the harm of animals. Whereas if I was able to look at each individual case and there was a human that ate meat, but they were health conscious and they cared about animals, but they limited their meat amount or something like that, even though I would be in favor of something else, I would still I wouldn't not save a person because they eat animals.
Of
Well,
course.
that's the question about the psychological prediction of one's actions versus the ethical judgment. I would
Oh, fair.
definitely save my sister rather than one of the dogs too. You know, but as a point of
Gotcha.
fact, she contributes enormously to animal suffering, just like I used to too for many years. And so I can still say it would have been overall better for the world if I had saved the dog or not saved either of them.
Or not
That's
save.
unfortunately the logic that living a carnist animal torturing life brings about. It's not my fault. Don't shoot the messenger. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's the behavior of people who are not stopping funding the torture of animals, that they are making their lives
Yeah, I know
worse
what you
for the
mean. Yeah,
world.
yeah. Like if you could hypothetically just take every living human right now and and you put them on a scale of who's gonna cause the most harm and suffering in their lives, and if you just took the 10% out of the 100% that is going to cause the most harm and suffering, and you just snap them out of existence, then there's a it's safe to say factually that that's probably a better world. I wouldn't do it. I don't want to make that judgment
Are
call.
we talking about mass genocide?
Well, I'm just saying if it were to happen, the outcome would be a better outcome than if they were still here. Depending
If
on
we
some
had
other
a process to
variables.
figure that out, but
But
we
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's just
just
it's
just just think about any human welfare issue.
mhm.
Via what if
Oh, no, exactly, because
if
that
there's a
list I was
city
talking
where
about.
you knew that all of the 1 million people in the city were all molesting their children every day,
Hmm.
you know
Yeah, like
and then also the children were molesting each other or whatever, like everybody's just doing really horrible stuff.
yeah.
and
drop a hydrogen bomb in that
and
city.
and,
It's a lost cause.
so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about when we're talking about it's not like we're going to do it partly because we have this kind of hope that maybe borders on faith. I don't want to say it's blind faith, because there's reason to think that history improves, morality improves throughout history. But I think that's what you need. We have the hope that these people are going to go vegan, and then even do the things that go beyond vegan to caring about the well-being of all sentient life on Earth and in space, if we ever find any. Um,
Hmm.
we have that hope, and that's why our action plan is not to go out and kill a bunch of people, but
Yeah.
just being honest about the morality. There are
Hmm.
just
When
most people on Earth are making the world a worse place than if they were never around.
But
so
real
we
quick,
need a
so
social reform for that, but
mhm.
we literally moved way away from the topic because
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
Yeah,
think we all agree that we need these animals. I think
yeah,
we agree on most of the points. I don't know about Carson
yeah,
here.
yeah.
What do you
Well,
think,
so
Carson?
I disagree with both of you for very different reasons. um, because you guys are
Thank
on the
God.
same side, but I think for complete different reasons. I'm guessing you would actually be able to convince each other of why you think each other are wrong. But so they you were saying that you care more about humans, and so I do too. So if I'm on an island, I'm going to kill an animal to survive. But just because an animal can be used for a likely survival in the future, I don't think that's a fair approach to look at it. Choosing to kill something to like if me and my family are out in the forest and we're freezing and I need to kill a bear to use its fur for warmth, I'll do that. I'll kill an animal to eat it, but to breed and raise an animal to teach it and train it and I don't know. Let's imagine hypothetically it went through suffering during the training because it would get like a punishment whenever it doesn't learn a thing, versus treats
Positive
when it.
reinforcement, Carson. I went through. Sorry, I'm cutting you off,
You're fine.
but I I actually checked how these guys trains these animals. What they do is use positive reinforcement. There is literally no punishment. If there is an
Oh, okay.
animal, if there is a dog, they can't train them. They don't beat them. They just let it go. That
Gotcha. Okay.
animal is not a part of that training anymore. But there is absolutely no punishment.
Gotcha. So yeah, so I think that I think that's an important thing to factor in. But yeah, I don't know. Like if somebody told me they were gonna test on 10 monkeys and cure cancer, I'd probably say I think that's horrible, but go ahead and do it because the numbers outweigh. And but in general, my thought is that we shouldn't force animals to do anything that we don't know they want to do. And so the idea that we can say, if we do this, we'll likely save lives because in the future they're going to go and do this thing. Um, I just don't think that's the same as choosing a human over an animal. It's like creating an animal slave. Now, if Jeremy's right, and what matters is their well-being, and this is higher level of well-being, then that's kind of an overall like it's bad wording, but playing God type thing of will take away their potential liberty to be out in the wild and run around and have fun because they are very likely to die and suffer horrible deaths, and so they will have better lives by forceful removal of liberty. So, so that's why I disagree
So
with both of you, but I also
The only
agree with both of you.
problem,
so
the only problem
so
with playing
like,
God
you
is what
disagree
the
because you don't
gods
have
have
the
done.
stats. Uh,
Okay, well,
so you
Babe,
don't
go
have
ahead, go
stats,
first.
right? Yeah, let me give you the stats right now.
Wait,
So this
say that again.
yeah, stats. So in my country, the population is 1.4 billion people. 1.4 billion. We train approximately 40,000 dogs for certain purposes every year, and unfortunately, 5% of them die. But we regularly need new dogs because older ones are like 5-year-old or 7-year-old dogs are retiring from their job every year as well. So, for search and rescue, these dogs help with floods, with forest fires, and all. So, these dogs are saves approximately 1,300 humans every year in my country.
Oh wow.
Okay, therapy animals. Therapy animals, we use approximately 150 therapy animals every year, including cats. They have dogs and cats as well. Okay. For drug detection, we use approximately 500 dogs in multiple airports and other places. Just oh sorry, 600 dogs in airports and other places. So the problem with drugs, I don't think drugs should be banned, but it should be controlled. Someone needs to control them. So these jobs are important. India have a drug problem. Avalanche rescue, we don't have any place where we need avalanche rescue in India, luckily, other than Kashmir. And it's not a huge deal, but still, at approximately since 2011, every year, around 10 lives we are saving. Firefighting, we don't use dogs for that anymore. It's banned in last 3 years. So that's a good thing. Animal assisted interventions. We use 3,000 dogs every year. These dogs have a job. They are happy. Okay. Research and monitoring purposes, we have approximately 6,000 dogs. Now, these dogs do suffer in their job, and 35 to 40% of them die in the process. So, this is the only negative part which I'm not yet convinced that we need that. So, we use birds to detect pollution levels in marine, and say we save marine animals because of that. So, overall, the numbers of dogs we are using, we are saving more lives.
Yeah.
And not all of the dogs we are using, not all of them are dying, not all of them have a horrible life. So if you think about it, if you really think that one life equals to another life, so when it comes to numbers, we are saving more. And animals in wilds, they do suffer.
Hmm.
These dogs have a better life than the dogs or the coyotes we have in wild.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
let me. I think I think you make a great point, especially when you look at the numbers saved and see how many dogs don't make it. So I have 2 points I want to do. One, I want to take something you said and ask Jeremy about it, and then I have a question for you after that. So Jeremy,
sure, sure.
what would your thoughts be on this topic if we knew that in the wild every wild animal had the greatest life ever, or at least the ones that weren't eaten, so dogs. So let's just say we knew that wolves, instead of only 95% of them not making it to adulthood, let's say they all made it to adulthood. And whenever we go out filming documentaries, every wolf is just having the best time ever. Would it still be acceptable to give them a little less well being for the amount of humans we can save
Well,
with
would,
them?
would that include human animals in the wild? So, like, instead of instead of raising your 2 year old at home, uh, taking care
Nope.
of them and trying to mold them, if you just threw them out into the wild and they live the happiest life ever, which is much better than they live at home,
Yeah,
that's not
no.
the case.
So this would be
Humans still need
humans.
to be domesticated.
Yeah, so humans are doing exactly what they're doing now. But let's say we
Okay,
had no interactions
well,
with animals
you know,
whatsoever, and then we
yeah,
could bring
yeah.
wolves in to work with us.
Well, anything anything you did is basically by definition to change somebody having a perfect life
Hmm.
to having a life of just the maximum possible positive well-being into the real world.
Hmm.
It would be bad to bring somebody out of that hypothetical
Hmm.
uh,
But what about
utopia
comparatively?
into the real world.
So he said 1,300 humans were saved. How many dogs are trained a year?
40,000.
40. Okay, of 40,000 to save 1,300.
No, 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 no. In different criterias, not all of them dogs are doing search and
Okay.
rescue. This is the number we have. It's off by 2%, and only not I
Oh,
shouldn't say
only
only,
5%
but
of the 40.
approximately
Okay. Well, here, hold on.
5% of them have a bad life or they die.
Okay. So let's just say hypothetically. So in the world, 10,000 humans would get saved by these dogs, and only 500 of the dogs would die, and then the rest would have not as good of lives as they have out in the wild, but they would have as good as we currently give them.
Yep.
So you're
So,
asking me about the would the benefits to the humans outweigh not only the occasional death, but more importantly the reduction in well-being from hypothetical amazing lives in nature to uh, kind of maybe slightly positive well-being, but not a lot of well-being in domestication for different jobs.
mhm.
Probably not. It probably doesn't seem like the functions that these dogs are being used for have such a large positive effect on human well-being that it would justify that sort of thing. I mean, this is such a weird counterfactual because, of
Mhm.
course, nature is very, very. It's basically the opposite of perfect. Nature is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
place of
No,
immense suffering.
it's
Um,
mostly just like figuring out exactly why you feel how you feel and where you feel it. Because I'm guessing Vabe would disagree. It would be because of the amount of humans being saved. If it, what
oh
was it,
yeah,
10,000? So if 10,000 humans are saved
It's
all over the
no,
world,
I
no,
think
no.
I
I
definitely
disagree
disagree
for
with
two reasons.
Vaya. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think
I
the
disagree for two reasons. It's
uh
Jeremy, I'm so sorry. I
no, it's
work
okay.
for stray animals and abandoned animals. I have been doing that for years now.
Mm.
Those animals who doesn't have job or good people to take care of them, these animals shouldn't have existed, but they do now. So I'd rather let them have jobs than being on road or being on a place where they are not being taken care of. These animals have best life. They work out every day. They get their food on
Mhm.
time. They get to play. They enjoy their lives as long as they're there. Yeah, there is a
I'm gonna
possibility
pause you real
of
quick.
death. And
I'm going to
yeah,
pause you real quick because just in the hypothetical, it wouldn't be comparing them to being strays with horrible lives. It would be if they all the dogs were just amazing, happy lives in the wild. If that were the case, which it's not, would you think that the amount of humans
I'll change my
saved?
stand. In that
Okay.
situation, I will change my stand and I'll be like,
Okay.
okay, let them have a happy life. They don't have
Okay.
that.
So you guys agree more than I thought you did, because I thought Jeremy's stance was only on well-being, and I thought yours was on human safety. So that's
No,
cool
no,
that we
I
figured
am
out
on
how to break
human
that down.
safety. I'm on human safety, but I will not agree with 40,000 then. And I will immediately stop if I had the power to research and monitoring. These
Okay.
things I will stop immediately if they had a
Gotcha.
perfect life in wild, but they don't.
Now, now I noticed you said that they stopped using dogs for fires, house fires, but that they
Yeah,
use them for forest
house
fires
fires,
because
yes.
that was a concern
Yeah.
of mine. I don't know how much they are like humans, but it's different to go swimming to save somebody drowning or to various different things that can be done, smelling drugs, but having to go in areas where you're gonna breathe in smoke and like have worse lives. That's just something worth thinking about. So they do go into wildfires still.
Yeah, so we don't have we have a wildfire issue, but not as much. And it's bad for them, but it's just imagine a person whom is we can't find that person is shouting. We have an animal who can literally smell that person and help save a human life. When it comes to that, it's really hard to say that we shouldn't use that animal now, because
Yeah,
no matter how much suffering a human is bringing in this world, as long as we don't know who that person is, it's our moral responsibility to be ready and save that person.
that's a fair point. Yeah.
I think that also, Carson, I can say this. Um, it will sort of explain a lot that aside from the incentives to horrifically exploit in factory farms, the general phenomenon of domestication seems to be a very good thing for well-being.
Mhm.
And that's a strange caveat because of the reason why animals were domesticated overall, and what it's led to, the hell on earth that it's led to, that every vegan knows. But if I think about the far technologically and ethically advanced future and what it would look like, I'm quite convinced that whatever non-human animals would exist in that future would essentially be semi-domesticated, living in some kind of amazing sanctuary that that maximizes their own well-being, and there would be no animals in nature. There would essentially be no, in the ideal technologically and ethically advanced future, there ought to be no nature, because nature is a source of immense negative well-being for sentient beings.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, and that's a topic I definitely think we should get into, and there is going to be a debate on patrolling wildlife for next weekend's debates. But just real quick, if there aren't any, I think you guys mostly agree, and I think I've been kind of convinced to lean towards your guys' thoughts on this as well. If neither of you have any other thoughts on the security and rescue animals, I guess I'd like to hear from each of you if there are any jobs that animals have to do that you would want to outlaw. We'll start with Jeremy, I guess.
Any jobs for animals that I would want to outlaw in the society
Like
project?
seeing eye dogs or
I mean, it's pretty clear
therapy
that
dogs.
riding horses contributes to negative well-being of the horses. Both
Okay.
the damage to their backs, but I think more importantly, the process of breaking involves a lot of suffering. And
Now, is it only because we have an alternative? So, like, there's police on horses in like New York. I don't know why they do it, but they don't have to. They can use cars or bikes or
bikes.
whatever. If there was a thing where similar to dogs helping with wildfires and different things, where there was like a I don't know, forest fighting groups of people that can't drive cars or ride bikes out in the forest, but they can ride horses to get somewhere better. Would there be an exception if it helped the well-being of saving humans, and then also the horse is treated well aside from that riding?
I mean, it in principle, there could be. I'm a consequentialist, you know. If you could use 100 horses and it would protect an entire nation from very likely threats of nuclear war or something, then yeah.
Yeah. Well, here one last.
There could in principle be that sort of trade-off, but in practice, I can't think of anything plausible that
Okay.
would justify that amount
And
of suffering.
I know that you've said that even though you'd want a vegan world, you wouldn't want to put it in law until everybody was ready. So if it's not in law because everybody's not ready, but you could put it in law that people can't ride horses, would you want it to be where farmers that would farm cows and stuff like that, until that got put into law as well, that the farmers wouldn't be able to use horses to it's kind of a weird question, but to wrangle up their cattle?
I mean, I want to make it as hard as possible for cattle farmers to
Okay, good. Yeah.
be
No,
in
I
business. So
I just
yeah.
wasn't sure with that stance of yeah. Anyways, so just curious. Okay, so horse riding jobs removed, and everything else with animals, you can't think of any that you would want to outlaw because of the harm that comes from them. Or I guess you can ponder while Vabe says his. All right.
Watchdogs. We
Oh,
have
Watch
yeah.
dogs.
dogs we have security dogs. These dogs are sitting in a building where someone can actually come and try to steal stuff. These dogs are in real danger. We could use infrared cameras, but we want to try and save some money, and we are using dogs. So that's something I don't like.
There's also, I think you're talking about the sort of professional business use, where there's an official guard dog, but surely across the world, especially outside of the very highly developed, wealthier nations, the number one reason why humans choose to have dogs in their home is essentially to be a watchdog. Across the world, in Asia and Africa, a dog is most likely to be just chained up outside the house, not really treated with much loving attention, and just
So the
there
benefits
to
for the in that
deter thieves and to
situation,
be an alarm clock, right?
in that situation, benefits for the dog always outweigh the danger that dog has. Because in a regular house, the chances of being murdered by someone is way low and way less risky. Uh, Other than if there is a person who's if there is a building, they make gold ornaments there, and they are using dogs for security. That place is way more likely to get robbed. So there is a difference. I'm talking about chances as well.